Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another Quran study. God willing, today we'll be reading from Surah 2, verse 1. Let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. ALM. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. ALM. And the footnote says, these initials remained a divinely guarded secret for 1400 years. Now we recognize them as a major component of the Quran's extraordinary mathematical code. See appendices 1, 2, 24, and 26. The meaning of ALM is pointed out in verse 2. This scripture is infallible. This is incontrovertibly proven by the fact that the frequencies of occurrence of these three initials in this surah are 4,502, 3,202, and 2,195, respectively. The sum of these numbers is 9,899, or 19 times 521. Thus, these most frequent letters of the Arabic language are mathematically placed according to a superhuman pattern. These same initials also prefix Surah 3, 29, 30, 31, and 32, and their frequencies of occurrence add up to multiples of 19 in each one of these surahs. So as the footnote says, these initials, the Alif Lam Mim in Arabic, or ALM, it remained a divinely guarded secret for 1400 years until God decided to reveal it through God's messenger of the covenant, Dr. Rashad Khalifa, in 1974. And there's more details about it, as it says in the appendices. You can read more about it, how it was discovered, and how the initials played an important role in discovering the Quran's mathematical code, and how it plays into the mathematical code, and how the frequencies of initials of each initial chapter that is initial with ALM has frequencies being multiples of 19, right? And it says they prefix Surah 3, 29, 30, 31, and 32, and the frequencies of occurrence add up to be multiples of 19 in each one of these surahs. And the reason why it's important to mention that is because, some people disputed these counts, and they said that they're not multiples in each one of the surahs, and they're multiples in certain surahs, but not in others. But if you add them together, they add up to multiples, and they came up with their own counts and create a big division among the submitters and cause a lot of doubt and confusion. But we know here that the miracle itself, the way it's designed, these are meant to be individually multiples of 19, right? And it says that these most frequent letters of the Arabic language are mathematically placed according to a superhuman pattern. And so it's important to understand what that means, right? A superhuman pattern, because it's a text that was not created by someone with the idea of having the mathematical composition there, who knew about the composition. Like, people would think that Muhammad wrote the Quran on his own. He made up the Quran, but he had no idea about the Quran's mathematical code. And one could even argue that, if he knew about the Quran's mathematical code, then it would have been like slightly easier for him to even attempt something like that, But the thing is, Muhammad had no idea about the Quran's mathematical code. So the fact is that you cannot take any book, and extract all the mathematical patterns the way we have in the Quran. It's not possible. Yes, somebody can write something very primitive, very basic with some numbers, right? But as soon as you start, adding more parameters to it, how the appendices are filled with all the different facts, like the number of words, number of letters, numbers of verses, number of times God is mentioned, number of initials that are used in each chapter, all of that. When you start adding all of those things, by the time you're done it with it, the literary composition will be completely destroyed. You may have something with numbers, but the thing is, if you try to read the book, you will not understand anything and will not even make sense, because it's not possible to write anything without degrading the literary composition of the letters, right? And so, the odds of this, just being by someone other than God is, very similar to another example that the Messenger of the Covenant gave, which was that the odds of the creation of the human being, right? It's like by itself is like the same way, and that is an explosion in a printing factory, and it becoming a unabridged dictionary, right? And so encyclopedia, either one, right? Because everything is in the correct order, right? It has to be in a certain sequence, and that goes same for all creations from God, right? Our DNA and everything else. And the same will go for the Quran, how intricate it is, the creation of God. And that is the purpose behind the Quran's mathematical code, to make the human being realize that this is the truth from God. It's created by the same creator who created everything else around us, and this is the 100% truth from God. So we're told from the very get-go that this message that we're reading, the reader is informed that this is from God. It says, this scripture is infallible, a beacon for the righteous. So that is the meaning of this ALM in the beginning. So the three categories of people. Number one, the righteous. Verse 3, who believe in the unseen, observe the contact prayer salat, and from our provisions to them, they give to charity. And the footnote says, since the contact prayers are decreed 5 times a day, they constitute the prime source of nourishment for our souls. Along with other practices in submission, the contact prayers were originally revealed through Abraham, 21:73, 22:78. Although these 5 daily prayers were practiced before the revelation of the Quran, each prayer is specifically mentioned in the Quran in 24:58, 11:114, 17:78, and 2:238. Appendices 1 and 15 provide physical evidence supporting all the details of the contact prayers, including the number of units, rakats, and the number of bowings, prostrations, and tashahuds in each prayer. So the 3 categories of people that are mentioned here, number 1 is the righteous. So the righteous people, they believe in the unseen, they observe the contact prayer salat, and from our provisions to them, it says they give to charity. So they give their zakat, they give their salat, and do their salat. And God says that the contact prayers are decreed 5 times every day. So people may argue that it's 3 or 2 or none, but we have the full scientific proof for all the prayers, how many units are in each prayer, how many times you have to prostrate. Every single aspect of the prayer is mathematically composed, and you can see more about that especially in Appendix 15. And there's some incredible numbers that are mentioned there, especially it, counts for every single parameter of your contact prayer, every single one of them. And they're all add up to multiples of 19, and some of them are very long numbers. And you can read more about the specific ones for the contact prayer in Appendix 15, and in general about the mathematical miracle itself in Appendix 1. So like it says, the number of bowings, the number of prostrations, and the number of the shahads in each prayer. You know how many times you sit and you say the shahads, all of that is mathematically composed. And you can appreciate that when you go through Appendix 15 and look at those numbers. It's pretty incredible, subhanAllah. And it says, verse 4, and they believe in what was revealed to you and what was revealed before you, and with regard to the hereafter, they're absolutely certain. These are guided by their Lord. These are the winners. So the idea is that, the righteous, are people who reverence God. They are concerned about the hereafter, and which is why, they observe the contact prayer, salah. They believe in the unseen. A human being tends to believe only what he sees in front of him, God says in the Quran, right? And so, but the righteous are people who are blessed with certainty, and they're people who believe in the unseen without even seeing, the things, the angels around them or God in this world. They believe that they exist, and that is part of our test, to recognize God as our absolute, king, and, someone with absolute authority without even being able to see him, and this is part of the test. And most people will fail that test because they do not believe in the unseen, and especially they do not believe in the hereafter. The hereafter, it says with regards to the hereafter, they are absolutely certain, So the idea is that if we believe that the hereafter will come to pass, but we're less than 100% sure about it, right? I mean, we're a little bit doubtful about that, right? Then we're not going to make it. People who are going to make it in the hereafter are people who are absolutely certain. So we should have no doubt, not a single slight bit of doubt, any doubt whatsoever. If there exists, we should try to eliminate that doubt. Have a debate with yourself, with your jinn, and find out, what is stopping you from accepting, that the hereafter is coming, because it is extremely important, and it's something that just distinguishes a believer from a hypocrite, right? So it's important for us to overcome any doubts that we have regarding the hereafter, because if we harbor those doubts, eventually those doubts will overtake our soul, and we can either completely go off the path or go off the path while believing we're on the right path. So many things can happen, right? So it's important for us, as part of the test, part of the requirement is that we have to completely 100% be sure and certain that the hereafter is going to come to pass. Because people who are doing righteous things because just in case there's a God and just in case there's a hereafter, they're not going to make it. And that is 100% true. So God says those are the people who are guided by God, and those are the people who are the winners. When people are uncertain about the hereafter, that's when they get attracted by all the bad things. That's when they get attracted by Satan. That's when they get attracted by all the hadiths and sunnah and all the lies attributed to God. Because if someone's sincere about God and sincerely and truly believes in God and seeks him, God will guide him to the right path, right? Because obviously, God doesn't, it's not like God is trying to find a way to punish humans, right? God says he does not gain anything from punishing us, and he wants us to be guided, right? But the human being insists upon disbelieving. And that's the human being who insists on going to hell, insists upon disbelieving. Number 2, the disbelievers. As for those who believe, it is the same for them. Whether you warn them or not warn them, they cannot believe. God seals their minds and their hearts and their hearing, and their eyes are veiled. They have incurred severe retribution. So the second category of people, obviously, is the people who disbelieve. They're openly declaring their disbelief, and there's no. It's not a mystery. These people are clearly disbelievers, whether they're idol worshippers or complete atheists. There are people who don't believe, right? And they don't believe. They say they don't believe, and it's obvious. But God says these people are also blocked. Like when you try to help them or guide them in any way, I mean, it just doesn't go anywhere. You'd think that there's so much proof out there about God and about the truth, and if you give them enough information, that just because they don't have the information, if you give them enough information, that they'll become guided by God. But the thing is that these people cannot be guided, because it says God has actually sealed their minds and their hearing, and their eyes are veiled. Right now, this is allegorical in the sense that their eyes are not literally veiled, and their ears are not literally sealed. They can still hear people when they talk and everything. However, when it comes to the message, when it comes to the truth, it's almost like their eyes are veiled, right? Because they cannot see the truth. They cannot understand the message. They cannot appreciate the proofs. And then the third category, which is very similar to the second category, but it's like a mixture of the first category and the second category. But it's actually, closer to the second category, which is, the hypocrites. And hypocrites are people who are very deceptive. And so God, when I read about this category, it says, then there are those who say, we believe in God and the last day, while they're not believers. And the footnote actually for verse 6 says, actually I forgot to read 4 also. It says, despite severe distortions that afflicted the previous scriptures, God's truth can still be found in them. Both the Old Testament and the New Testament still advocate absolute devotion to God alone. Deuteronomy 6:4-5, Mark 12:29-30. All distortions are easily detectable. Okay. And the footnote for 2, 6, and 7 says, those who make a decision to reject God are helped in that direction. They are prevented by God from seeing any proof or guidance for as long as they maintain such a decision. The consequences of such a disastrous decision are spelled out in verse 7, right? So basically, what the footnote is referring to is, the person's mind there is sealed by God because of themselves, because they made the decision to reject the truth, and then God seals their minds, right? So they make a conscious decision on their own to decide to disbelieve before they're actually blocked from seeing any truth, right? But from someone who's willing to see the proof, God will show them the proof. But someone who wants to not see the proof, then obviously, if they don't want to see it, God is not going to make them believers, right? Because that's not how, God is who God is. And so God doesn't want robots, he wants people who will choose God on his own, on their own free will, as part of this test. And there's absolutely no compulsion in that in any way. And absolutely, if God wanted, he could have made them believers or the best believers. But the thing is, these people decided not to become believers. And so they're blocked. And that's most people decided not to be believers, right? God says majority of the people on this earth are disbelievers. And then you have the other people who still believe in God, but then they're still disbelievers because they believe in other idols besides God. And then the hypocrites are people who say, it says, verse 8 says, then there are those who say we believe in God and the last day, while they are not believers. In trying to deceive God and those who believe, they only deceive themselves without perceiving. In their minds there is a disease. Consequently, God augments their disease. They have incurred a painful retribution for their lying. When they're told, do not commit evil, they say, but we are righteous. In fact, they're evildoers, but they do not perceive. When they're told, believe like the people who believed, they say, shall we believe like the fools who believed? In fact, it is they who are fools, but they do not know. When they meet the believers, they say, we believe. But when alone with their devils, they say, we are with you, we were only mocking. God mocks them and leads them on in their transgressions, blundering. It is they who bought the straying at the expense of guidance. Such trade never prospers, nor do they receive any guidance. Their example is like those who start a fire. Then, as it begins to shed light around them, God takes away their light, leaving them in darkness, unable to see. Deaf, dumb, and blind, they fail to return. So these verses are incredible, and you can see how they go into great detail about the third category, as compared to the other two categories. But because the third category is very hard for some people, or just very hard to in general, like not very obvious, right? It's hard to understand because you look at a person who's a believer, you say, okay, this person is righteous, this person is doing everything. It's obvious this person is going to be a believer, right? And then you can see a disbeliever who's openly saying he's not a believer, and that's clear. But this other category of someone who's a believer but not really, becomes a little bit confusing, because these people can deceive other people. But God says they only deceive themselves without perceiving, because those people who are guided, God will guide them. And the hypocrites get exposed to them one way or another. And and so at the end, the only people who are deceiving themselves are the hypocrites themselves. And they say they're believers, they come, they join the believers, they come and join their Quran studies, join them in prayers, everything, but then eventually, something happens, you find out that, they have certain doubts, and the doubts have overtaken them, and they're exposed, right, through some situation. But you think that they are believers, right? And there were more details mentioned in other verses about the hypocrites, and God wants us to know these details, right? Obviously, we don't want to be suspicious of people, but we have to be cautious of the hypocrites, because the hypocrites are extremely dangerous category, in the sense that God tells us not to befriend them. And so if you are not to befriend hypocrites, people tell you, for example, not to worry about the hypocrites, like everybody's a believer. I've heard many people say that, it's like, oh, everybody who prays like me or fasts like me, whatever, and reads the Quran and says he worships God alone, he's my brother, because they have taken some verse out of context and blown out of proportion, and based on that, they make that decision, right? But God says that there are people who will believe in the same book, say they worship God alone, do the contact prayers, sit with you, do Quran studies, and they will still be just hypocrites, right? So and God says, do not befriend them, right? So if you're not to befriend a hypocrite, you have to know if a person's a hypocrite or not, right? I mean, people say do not judge, which is from Satan, right? Because God wants us to judge, which is why God is telling us about their qualities, right? I mean, God would just leave that out, because if God didn't want you to distinguish those people, right? So, but the idea is distinguishing them for our own good, right? Distinguishing them to save yourself, because those are the people that if you don't save yourself from these people, that they will afflict you with those doubts, with those ideas that they harbor, the way they're going astray. They will infect you with their ideas. It's like God says that says there's a disease in their hearts that prevent them from believing, and God augments their disease. And literally, it's something that spreads, eventually. Like, someone who has sometimes some kind of disease like a cancer or something, and then eventually it overtakes the entire body. And the same way, people who have doubts, and are struggling with the doubts, either they kill those doubts or the doubts will overtake them, right? They eliminate those doubts from them or the doubts will overtake them, right? It's like someone having cancer, you have to get rid of the cancer or the cancer will get rid of you, right? And so in this situation, it's like, someone was infected with some kind of cancer like that. It's not like the cancer in this world. It's like a very contagious thing, right? But not like, someone can get it from like a normal disease, but it's like you being around this person, by befriending that person, is how you can get infected, right? If you are around that person more, this person will, as the messenger says, rub off on you, right? So we don't want those people to rub off on us, right? Because then we'll end up being like them, which is why it's important for us to be away from them. Now, people will say, well, this is division and we should not be divided, right? But the thing is, God has a system, and these people will ultimately be weeded out by God, right? And it's a healthy thing because it's like purification, right? There's a diseased person, among you. God will purify that. Eventually, this person will not be around you, right? That's purification from God. We should not be sad about that. And we should not grieve over it for any reason. I mean, these are blessings from God, and this is how God purifies us. And then you have people who refuse to do that, right? Those are the people that eventually become just like them, right? And that's why you see hypocrites are indifferent about other hypocrites, and God says they're allies of one another. They are with each other. They are with other disbelievers, But for the believers, there are people who understand the importance of being pure and being guided, being on the right path, and they don't want to backtrack in their submission and endanger their hereafter by being around these people. So it's very serious. That's why God is telling us about who these people are, so we can recognize them and stay away from them as much as possible. And it's beautiful the way God has described these allegories about these people, right? So these people are just like the believers. They have the same appearance. They say the same things, etc. They say they believe in the same things, etc. But in their hearts, it's really not there, So eventually it comes out, right? And it says how it comes out right here. It says, when they're told, believe like the people who believed, they say, shall we believe like the fools who believed? In fact, it is they who are fools, but they do not know. So somewhere, in their journey of submission, a point will come where you will see, obviously, that these people are misguided, right? And you remind them from the Quran that this is what God says, and this is the truth, and this is what you should be doing, right? Whatever it is. Right? And at that time, their ego is exposed because you see that they don't care what God is saying, that they don't accept what God is saying, that they can't see what God is saying, that they're somehow blocked, right? And this is what they say. Oh, they look at the believers and they say, these people are idiots. And they say, we're not going to believe like these idiots. As it says, they're fools, right? And God says they're the ones who are fools, but they do not know. And it says they mock the believers, and God says God is the one who mocks them. And he leads them on in the transgressions, blundering. And so they go on that path. I mean, imagine God's amazing system, right? Because people cannot fool God. This is a system that is created by God to test us completely from the inside out. And so we cannot fool God into pretending that we're believers, but inside we're not. It's not going to work that way. That has to come out. It has to come out for God. It has to come out in front of the believers, and they will be exposed. That's the whole point of being in this world, is to expose our actions, by our actions and our thoughts, who we really are, so we can, either go to heaven or hell. And so the other part that is interesting here, it says they brought this straying at the expense of guidance. So they had guidance, and instead of guidance, they decided to trade it away for straying. And God says such a trade never prospers, nor do they receive any guidance. And so that is such a sad thing for these people, because it's tragic, because these people are very close to the message. They come very close to the truth. They see the miracles. They see the truth. So for example, with submission, a person comes to submission. They see the mathematical miracle. They say they believe in the mathematical miracle. They witness the messenger. They say they believe in the messenger, and they see all the proofs. And that at that point, this person has the potential to go to the highest heaven, right? And he has the potential to go to the lowest pit of hell, right? Which is the hypocrites, God says, are destined for the lowest pit of hell. And he decides to go to the lowest pit of hell, right? So that, instead of going to the highest heaven, right? So that's really an extremity that, these people, completely switch their direction. And also, I love the example that God talks about here. It says the example is like those who start a fire, that as soon as it begins to shed light around them, God takes away their light, leaving them in darkness, unable to see. Deaf, dumb, and blind, they fail to return. Right? So it's like they come into submission, they light a fire, then just as it doesn't take very long, but just as the light starts, just as the fire starts to, bring the light around them, they're just as they're about to start seeing, like you just started the fire. It hasn't even enlightened you fully, right? You just became a submitter. You haven't, cleared anything in your soul properly. You haven't cleansed everything, and you just got some guidance, right? But they cannot withstand it. They cannot stand that guidance, and somehow they fall into doubts. And at that point, that light is taken away from them, right? God, because they decide to disbelieve, God takes away the guidance. And at that point, these people are locked in their disbelief, right? It's indeed like a very sad thing, because for these people, obviously, not for the believers, but for these people, it's a sad thing, because they spend their lives, till the end, pretending to be believers, doing the things that we do as submitters, doing the contact prayers, etc. Some of them obviously will not even do the contact prayers, but most of them being hypocrites, saying that they believe they will do these things, right? Yet they're going to hell, and they're convinced by their evil devil companions that they are the righteous people, and that the actual people who are righteous, that they are the evil ones. They think they're stupid, right? And they think of themselves as being very smart and very righteous, and being guided, being on the straight path, right? And that could be any one of us, which is why God is teaching us also to examine ourselves, to make sure that we are not in that category, or we're not falling in that category, because obviously if we are, we have to come out of it, right? But there are people who are hypocrites, and there are a lot of them, right? Because, the believers are a minority. So somehow these people will end up falling into idol worship, Like, for example, the Mohammedans, they are also a form of hypocrites because they say they believe, but they're idol worshippers, and they're going to hell, right? And so also you have hypocrites among submission where they don't mention idols like Muhammad, but they have some other idols based on some other laws that they may have brought in from somewhere else, from some other source, but they identify as submitters, right? But they're not. And then because if they were, obviously, then they would follow what God said, right? And then the other example is also very good. Verse 19, it says, another example, a rainstorm from the sky in which there is darkness, thunder, and lightning. They put their fingers in their ears to evade death. God is fully aware of the disbelievers. The light of faith. The lightning almost snatches away their eyesight. When it lights for them, they move forward, and when it turns dark, they stand still. If God wills, He can take away their hearing and their eyesight. God is omnipotent. So, the example of the rainstorm from the sky is pretty much the same, right? I mean, someone who is a believer, they can see consistently in life, and they're guided because they're guided, right? It's like someone having a GPS, it's constantly guiding you through every step of their life, right? They can see, consistently. But then you have these hypocrites that cannot see. They have the truth, but they cannot see. They cannot apply the Quran in their lives. Imagine, right? So for them, what is it like? It's like a rainstorm from the sky in which there's darkness, thunder, and lightning. So there is a lot of lightning and thunder, and these people are afraid and scared, and they put their fingers in their ears. They block themselves, from getting the truth because they made the decision to block themselves, and now they're blinded. And then they don't have the light of faith, right? And it says the light of faith, in this case, it almost snatches away their eyesight. So God gives us the example of lightning, right? The lightning is very bright, and it lights up the whole place. It almost blinds the person because it's dark. As soon as there's a light on, obviously, you can't see, right? It almost blinds us. But these people cannot see even with the light. And when the light comes, when they see some light, they see bits and pieces of lights here and there, but just not enough for them to be on the right path, but just enough for them to pretend to be submitters, like it's time for prayer. Yeah, they're going to go do their contact prayers because they think that's the thing to do. They can see that, but they cannot see anything else, right? So it's like little bits and pieces they can see, like little shimmers of light here and there. And so this is how you see these people and their growth in submission, or in general about coming to understanding about the truth, like they have no insight into the Quran at all, right? They're just like parrots. They read and they see, and whatever they read verbatim, if they're verbatim, they read something, oh, it says this, they'll do it. But when they have to analyze a little bit to see the truth to apply in their life, they have no insight, right? They cannot do it, right? It's like someone, preparing for a math career, right? But they read the book and they just memorized all the equations, right? And they just memorized every equation, right? And they memorize the numbers too. So when you give them a problem to solve in their own life with the same formula, they cannot solve it because they only memorized the numbers without actually understanding the concept. They don't have an insight into it on how to apply it, what they learned. They can just simply parrot what they learned. And so if you give them, you just change the numbers, and you give them the same problem that they read in the book, they cannot solve it, right? that shallow when it comes to submission and understanding the message, right? And really, it's so sad. I mean, I keep saying it's sad. It's so sad because look what God has given us. God has given us this amazing Quran with all the guidance from Him that can save us from eternal retribution. And they pick it up and read it, but then they decide to go to the lowest pit of hell, like the worst destiny anybody can imagine, right? Worse than a regular disbeliever. So, indeed, something to be scared of. And that's why it's important for us to be on the lookout for this, because we don't want to put ourselves in that position. So it's extremely serious, right? You cannot be like all casual about it and not care. We have to be concerned about that. And so God will now read from verse 21. It says, "O people, worship only your Lord, the one who created you and those before you, that you may be saved. The one who made the earth habitable for you, and the sky is structure. He sends down from the sky water to produce all kinds of fruits for your sustenance. You shall not set up idols to rival God, now that you know." And so we are being strictly told to worship God and devote ourselves absolutely to God alone. I mean, that's the message. The first commandment in the Quran is to worship God alone. And we have to remember that always. And then it says the mathematical challenge, verse 23, "If you have any doubt regarding what we have revealed to our servant, then produce one surah like these and call upon your own witnesses against God if you're truthful." Allegorical description of hell. "If you cannot do this, and you can never do this, then beware of the hellfire whose fuel is people and rocks. It awaits the disbelievers." And then the footnote says, well, actually there's a footnote for 20 also, verse 20. It says, when it says he can take away their hearing and their eyesight, the footnote says he and she do not necessarily imply gender in Arabic. See Appendix 4. And then for verse 24, it's 23-24, it says, "The Quran's miraculous mathematical code provides numerous proofs as it spells out the name Rashad Khalifa as God's messenger or God's servant mentioned here. Some literary giants, including Al-Mutanabbi and Taha Hussein, have answered the literary challenge, but they had no awareness of the Quran's mathematical composition. It is the Quran's mathematical code, revealed through God's messenger of the covenant, Rashad Khalifa, that is the real challenge, for it can never be imitated. See Appendices 1, 2, 24, and 26 for detailed proof." So as I already explained about the challenge, right? I mean, if you want to write beautiful words about God, I mean, you can create a book and make it rhyme the same as the Quran, but you can never create a mathematical system like what the Quran has, right? And so you can especially not create it from a book that you didn't write, right? But you can write a book, but even if you write a book, you still can't come anywhere even close to that. It's impossible. And all the artificial intelligence in the world, all the computers in the world, all the humans in the world, if they band it together, they still cannot do it, right? It's that awesome, right? And we have to really appreciate it, how awesome that is. So this is the mathematical challenge, the real challenge. And so if someone really understands the Quran's mathematical code, right, they're not going to say, well, this is numerology. I believe the message, but the numbers, it doesn't really matter because it's numerology. And if you have the numbers, don't let it fool you. And that's stupid. But that's how you can tell, the hypocrites from the believers, right? Because the believers will understand the Quran's mathematical system. They understand what it means to be, for something to be a multiple of 19, the odds, being so small. Then having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. You get all these proofs. And so what are the odds? The odds keep diminishing of something being a multiple of 19. You can't say when you have over 100 facts of numbers being multiples than you can't say, well, it's a coincidence, or it's easy. The chances are that, you came up with multiples. You have that many numbers to play with. Yeah, you can. I mean, so this is what the disbelievers say, right? And so somehow, God puts these people in situations like that as an example where they get exposed pretty bad. But God shows us that His truth, is protected by the Quran's mathematical code, and it's that awesome. And this challenge cannot be answered by anybody. We're in 2025, but believe me, before the end of the world, nobody will have the intelligence as God has to come up with something even close. And this is why it says they cannot even produce one surah like this. So let alone the whole book. If you were to give them just one chapter and allow them to have a chapter with the mathematical patterns that we have in the Quran, they cannot do it, right? So we are not even fully into understanding all of the numbers, right? We only know the numbers that God has given to us, right? But even the numbers we have, like, we know the depth of it is amazing. Like, we're just like, this is just the tip of the iceberg, as the messenger said, right? There's more and more depth to it, right? But we're only limited by our understanding, right? And what we can grasp. Like, there's numbers obviously in the Quran with the mathematical code that it just, your brain just will give up, right? And like those long numbers, and most submitters don't even, not, I wouldn't say most submitters, but most people I've met, I can tell you for a fact that they haven't gone through every single mathematical fact in the Quran, right? So it's more than what we can handle, right? Otherwise, God would give us a lot more, if we had the capacity to even go through all of that, right? But subhanAllah, that's how amazing the Quran's mathematical system is, that even with all the intelligence and all the powers that people have, if they combine them, they cannot produce even one chapter like the Quran, right? And you can focus on one of the smaller chapters like the Al-Fatiha and see how deep the mathematical miracle goes, right? It's not just about the words, it's also the letters, numbers of frequencies of the letters, the letters that are used, and also their geometrical values, and correlations with other chapters. There's so much to it, right? And the interlocking relationship with the others, all of that, makes this challenge extraordinary and impossible. So may God allow us to, appreciate this, as we're supposed to. This is a great blessing from God. We are born in a time when we have that information. Obviously, if you were born in the previous century, anywhere from the time the people were created, I mean, you could not appreciate the Quran's mathematical code. But we have this information, and thank God for allowing us to be at a time where we can see that information and have the clarity that God wants us to have about our religion, about our rights, about our hereafter, that we can be guided by God. So with that, I will end. And if you guys have any comments or questions, please feel free. Thank you.
MashaAllah. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
MashaAllah. Thank you.
Thank you, Masha. All right. So we're gonna focus on the questions related to the verses, and once we're done talking about those, then we're gonna address any off-topic questions, right? So if there are any questions about the verses we read, let's address those first, and God willing, we can go to the rest later. But mashallah, brother, you've asked a very important question, and God willing, I love to talk about that. And also, I'm gonna share with you an article. Okay. All right. Anybody has any questions about comments about the categories of people, the three categories that some people said that God doesn't talk about the hypocrites because it's not important. I remember that. But yeah, it's so important that God talks about it in the very beginning in a lot of detail, and God, it's so important that God tells us not to befriend these people for that reason alone. So we have to be aware of that. But yeah, I mean, I find these examples, these allegories, very beautiful in how they depict these people. And God gives us these examples with the light and the darkness, so that we can understand, visualize, and understand these concepts and how these people, can be. And God willing, we are of the category of the righteous. Because the other two categories are both disbelievers, right? And mashallah, we also talked a lot about the Quran's mathematical code, so if there's anything relating to that, obviously the part about the contact prayers also we touched on. It's pretty incredible in Appendix 15, as I said, so if you haven't seen that before, I highly encourage you to take a look at it. It's pretty awesome. All right. So if there are no comments or questions about the verses we read, God willing, we can go on to the off-topic stuff, right? Okay, so So this is an article on submission.ws on the direction of Qibla. Which is very brief, right? But this is what we have from the Messenger of the Covenant. I actually wrote a long article before, but I think for some reason I decided to remove it. But because this short explanation is all we really need. It says this briefly: the soul cannot be stopped by walls or mountains. Thus, the shortest way to Mecca is right through the earth and not around the North Pole. During our salat, we bow and prostrate, and we face a semicircle, a wide range of angles, right? And so it's important to understand the difference between, especially if you're in the U.S., where the Qibla is or what it is, right? It's the direction from you straight to where the Qibla is. So look at yourself as a person in space, right? And then imagine the Kaaba somewhere else in space, right? So if you were to draw a straight line, from yourself to that thing, which is, I mean, when I say straight line, I don't mean like a curve around, the earth. I mean a straight line that, because the earth being round and stuff, right? For it to be fully straight, you have to go through the earth, right? Like if you have a ball, right? And there's one point on the ball, and then there's another point on the other side of the ball. You cannot draw a straight line with a ruler on the ball itself, right? You have to go through the ball. So if you were to draw that line, you have to find what direction in space that's going to be. Is it going to be north? Is it going to be south? Is it going to be east? So if you were to draw that straight line, that would be, even if you have to draw it from around the earth, it has to be one straight line that brings you to that place, right? It has to be a straight line. But the thing is, people have been tricked by Satan into following the wrong direction because they followed the way that the pilots would use when fuel became a precious commodity, where they wanted to save fuel. They were looking for ways to optimize their routes so they can save on fuel and get to their destinations. So they decided that because of the shape of the earth, the earth being like this, more elongated on the sides and being shorter on the top, they decided to go from above the North Pole, right? But if they were to draw a straight line through the earth, then they could not go from that direction. They'd have to go in the other direction, which is the southeast, right? And so you can do that kind of like the experiment with the globe in front of you. Take the globe, put a mark on where you are on Earth in North America, and put one mark on where the Saudi Arabia is, right? And see how that would take you from the North Pole, right? The only way it does is if you were to fly there, if you were to take that direction, it would bring you closer. But if you look at the direction, your angle, it's constantly changing, and that doesn't make sense, right? And so in this situation, when you're going towards, southeast, you're drawing a straight line, a fully straight line, right? And that straight line may be longer on the surface, but it's that same line that will go through the earth, will take you there in the shortest, without changing your direction. So our direction has to be from here straight to thing, right? You cannot say, well, from here, if I'm standing, I'm going to point this way. And when I'm going further close, I'm going to turn around a little bit, and then I'm going to turn around this way. And then eventually I'm going to go there, right? But that's what the airplane is doing. When the airplane is going, it's constantly changing its direction. Like it's not going in one direction. But if you were to go southeast, if you go straight, like fly from here, lift off in an airplane, fly straight without changing your direction, you're gonna go straight to Mecca in that if you're precisely following that direction, this which is southeast, right? But if you were to go northeast, you have to constantly make corrections and change your direction, right? Your angle will continue to keep changing, right? Which tells you that this is not the direction you're supposed to follow, right? And the reason is that our souls are not obstructed by mountains and buildings, right? If like I mean, there could be many examples, right? But the thing is, we shouldn't confuse yourself, and I don't want to make it overcomplicated for anybody. Also, so a simple experiment you can do is just take the globe and put the points around and try to draw a straight line, and you'll see that a line that has a straight, consistent angle will be the one that will point to the southeast. It will be the line that will go straight through the earth. And you can even do that like with, no, it doesn't have to be like a balloon. You can do it with like a watermelon or an orange or an apple. I think an apple would be good because you can cut it and everything, right? But anyways, yeah, that's basically the concept. I hope that makes sense. And yes, and Brother Jafar said, obviously, you can also use the submission app. So the submission app will give you the direction, the correct direction of Qibla anywhere. And mashallah, I'm glad it makes
So we
sense.
didn't know this before the messenger of the covenant, right? Like this is about the direction.
Yeah, I mean, it
we're talking
actually,
about.
and also the thing is, it actually started around the time of the messenger. Like people were still praying correctly, and around that same time, like ISNA, the Islamic and North American society, they decided to, according to him, he explains in, I think, one of the audios, he said that because they realized that the submitters were praying in this direction, they decided, like, as way to like differentiate themselves, like, okay, like thing like, okay, they're praying in this direction, we're not gonna pray in this direction, we're gonna pray in the other direction, right? So they changed their direction because up until recently, like around his time, they were all praying in the same direction. But then this happened, I believe, in the 70s. They started praying in the other direction.
MashaAllah. Brother Suleman, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So, is it okay to do contact prayers in a little bit, like just a little bit different direction than the app shows us? Like the app shows that the Qibla is exactly at 193, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I do 195 or 6, is that okay, or it has to be exactly 193?
I mean, you can't be that exact, unless you have a compass in your head, right? Right. But the thing is, like, if you know the direction is a certain way, you cannot purposefully change it, right? Now, of course, we can make mistakes, and I mean, God understands that, right? But the thing is, people cannot do it on purpose for no apparent reason. Like, let's say, the Qibla is, let's say, exactly straight for some people, and for some people it's slightly slanted, and they say, well, I don't like the slanting, I'm just going to pray straight.
Yeah.
If it's slightly slanted, you have to, God says, wherever you are, face the Qibla. God says it over and over, right? If you read the verse where it says, wherever you may be, you face the Qibla, right? Now, obviously, the righteousness is not where we face, but it's about obedience to God, right? It's about obeying God. And so, God says, pray in that direction, which is why we pray in that direction. And we try to do our best, we try to do our best. If you're off by an angle or two, but you use your best judgment. I mean, that's, you're held responsible for that, right?
Yeah, thank you for the answer.
You're welcome.
MashaAllah.
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 Brother Suleiman, so I have another question if you don't mind.
Sure.
It's about fasting.
Mm-hmm.
So I read a verse that says you can eat until like a downtime, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it also says when like the sun is like obvious, like when you see the sun shines a little bit, right? If
It
I'm
doesn't say when the sun shines a little bit. It
yeah,
says
like
until
if I'm
the.
wrong,
It says until the
correct me
dark.
please.
Yeah, it says until the dark thread of lights, until the dark thread of light becomes distinguishable.
Yeah.
Yeah, until the dark thread becomes distinguishable from the light thread, right? So if you look at
Yeah.
the globe, right, you see when the Earth rotates, you have the light on one side and you have the darkness on the other side, and in between you have these different shades, right? At some point, that shade between light and dark becomes distinguishable, right? That's the time of dawn, right? So if you wait longer, then you're going past it, right? As soon as you see that thread, you know, that line, that edge, it begins to get bright a little bit, even. That's when dawn starts, right?
Yeah, but shall I stop eating when it's dawn prayer or when
Yeah, when as soon
sun
as it's time
rises?
for no. As soon as it's time for dawn prayer, you have to stop eating.
Okay.
Yes.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, you can use the submission app to see how much time you have left. When you for the dawn prayer, and that's the amount that was. As soon as that time hits it at the you know on the needle, you know, you have to just stop completely.
Yeah, I used the app already.
Inshallah.
MashaAllah. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, even AI today, like some of the verses about the math, ChatGPT, even on I think the best version that I've used when it can't even count. Like it makes pretty big, obvious mistakes from, and then that's actually, like when I counted it myself, I'm like, oh, well, I don't know if I can try, And I mean, this was this was the top tier version. And I guess like the term is hallucination, and that's just, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's more, it makes me appreciate everything more. I mean, because yeah, just how many parameters, just and then everything makes sense, and then there's no contradictions either. So and then of course it preaches the most like sensible message. There's no mathematical miracle like for a Buddha's book. Like there's not, there's nothing. So that also lets us know. It's like, oh, wait, God alone. Okay, like this, it's a real blessing because like, and I think I said maybe before, but like a lot of these new findings with Apophis has been wonderful. Like in being able to study the miracle and learn. Like get a better grasp too, like on like reading footnotes and stuff, and then seeing I guess like its significance is more impactful
Mm-hmm.
And then just imagine like that, on the other end of the spectrum, this stuff, those findings repelled people, and made them
Mm-hmm.
undermining
Right.
without, it's like how could
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
be like that?
Right.
Mashallah for God helping us.
Inshallah.
Mashallah, brother. Yeah, brother Suleman, how you were talking about how people that haven't um like went through the whole miracle.
Mm-hmm.
Like even like I have read the appendix myself, but like it's just so much, so much
Mm-hmm.
information that it's like even if you go through it, like you can always remember the numbers, try to remember like the different numbers of the miracles, and
Mm-hmm.
like it's just it's more than enough, just like
Mm-hmm.
proofs on top of proofs, it's
Mm-hmm.
very amazing, and it's something that we should be appreciative about.
Mm-hmm.
Mashallah.
MashaAllah. I see that so many people were actually eating when it was sunrise time.
Oh, when it was sunrise
So
time?
many, yeah. Like even I was wrong. Like yesterday, I think it was yesterday, I ate when it was kind of like near to sunrise. With like 10 or 15 minutes left for sunrise.
Oh.
So I was kind of like very sad about that because I was doing it wrong,
Mm-hmm. But you
and I
didn't know,
saw
right?
that so
So,
many people were doing it wrong
right.
because like I don't know how to say, but in Quran like talks about when the sun just is like comes out slowly when it just brights.
Yeah, I mean, the Quran is very clear in terms of when we're supposed to do it. Um, so I think it's just if you read it, it's pretty clear that it's at dawn, right? And also because um it's like, yeah, I mean, it's really spells out like until the white thread of light becomes distinguishable from the dark thread of light, right?
Yeah, brother. Yeah, in Quran it says that, mashallah. So alhamdulillah, no, I know that the truth, God's gift, mashallah. So yeah, Jafar brother also asked something about zakat. So I was wondering about that question too, actually. Like, do we need to give zakat from zakat money?
Yeah, so the Messenger of the Covenant talks about that, and he says that any money that enters your pocket and is yours to keep, you have to give zakat on it, right? So whether it's zakat, whether it's something else, I mean, whatever it is, doesn't matter how you got the money. If it's your money and you're gonna keep it, it's not like money that you've already given zakat on. So you have to give zakat on it, right? Whether it's a paycheck or a gift or charity, it's something that you have to give zakat on.
Mashallah. It's really important to have some practices on like videos of the Messenger of God and Quran. That's why God says like have Quran studies and stuff, because humans are like they forget things easily and too early. So it's good to sometimes watch the messenger's video also.
Mm-hmm.
Not only finish and then stop watching, because there are very important things the messenger says. MashaAllah.
Mm-hmm. I'll be right back. All right. So any other questions from anyone? We didn't hear anything from John today. John, are you?
Oh, John.
Yes, John.
Oh, I'm a little tired. Yeah, my sleep schedule. So
Yeah.
but no, I was just thinking about verse 9. Like, I haven't witnessed this myself. I mean, probably more. A lot about. I mean, because you've kind of seen it unfold. But verse 9 is sort of too. Like, it's not worth, like, with this person. I mean, because of how well I know them.
Mm-hmm.
It's that I think it's like a parent to me now. I mean, among other things, like with their ego. But I think it's 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 like not taking that hard look. I think what like, even though if it's painful, like I think we all have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was telling, this is my father. I mean, for those who don't know, I mean, he's the one that got the original, I guess, came into submission at first. But
John, you finally let this word out.
yeah. I mean, I think I might have mentioned it before, but I mean, like it's. But he was one to spread doubt. Like, I was sending verses and stuff. I mean, this is going 2 years ago when I first got contact with him, and I mean, I'll talk to you about it. But he's very, he's like the Quran says, God sends people astray despite their knowledge. Like, he's very knowledgeable.
Mm-hmm.
But and then he said this thing one time. He said, talking about the ego and it, being self-serving and stuff, like it only fits when it's self-serving. And then he admitted or something like, I have an ego. And then he was like, ain't that killing the ego? And I'm just like, no. I'm like, I mean, I think I told you, like, I was like, no, man. I was like, well, that's a start. I said, but we have to actually, and it's very, like, it could be very uncomfortable. Like, at first I was telling him, and I mean, even for every I mean, even like in all our journey, submission journey, like, but it's that I really think it's not taking that hard look, because that's the thing, like, where the verse sticks out to me, because it's I guess it ties into like the malignant narcissism, where they I don't know, they try to deceive God, but it's like they don't realize that, like, okay, God, if God knows God is the omniscient, you're not doing anything good, like with this person just lying to themselves. And I mean, obviously, like, the warnings, couldn't help them. But yeah, eventually I had to disarm them. And I mean, it wasn't like super. I mean, it became easy at the end. But I mean, there's so many other verses like that remind me, especially because of you know, but and it's not to it's I mean, not to say. I mean, it's another important thing too, like the top, like which you brought up earlier about because I'm not saying where he went short or fell off because he started watching it deep. You know, like this was back in 2014, 15. You know, I looked. It was my computer, but I saw him like share folders and stuff. I mean, he started, and that's when he started doubting Rashad's messengership. You know, and I mean, I didn't really know too much about it deep and stuff, but I mean, it's all ego at the end of it. Like, you know, not to believe that somebody's a messenger or somebody is, you know, I mean, it's not worth it. You know. Like him deceiving himself, like he obviously can't deceive God. So it's because I mean he said so many things like he almost reverted back to Christianity and like low key believing that Jesus it like could be the truth, and he's talking about him being like the and I'm like no, I'm like what do you, I mean I think you remember the comment walked in on, but. That's that's a prime example because it's like okay, well, let me just kind of believe in this just in case, and just you know, it's I mean, you know, knowing the person so well, and like I mean, being your own father and your best friend.
Yeah, and then still listening to people like Mufti Mink and all this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And then he would send me. I mean, like I told you about this, but the him introducing Mufti Mink to me, and I was listening into it like early days, and then I hear this. I didn't know what hadiths and sunnahs were. I mean, I just started like kind of learning about the Quran, but everything was sounded awesome. Like, okay, it makes sense. There's accountability because that makes sense. You know, like.
Yeah, and where did you hear the thing about the cat?
Huh?
Where did you hear the thing about the woman watering the cat?
Yeah, it was from Mufti Mink, and I was like, oh my, I got really upset, like really sad. I was really actually depressed, like the whole day. I'm going when I got home from class, I asked him, and he knew. He was like, oh, how did he say it? Did he recite it in Arabic or did he say it in English? And I said, no, he said it in English. And he said, and because Mufti will only recite the Quran in Arabic, like he won't do that for hadiths. And but that's how my dad. He's like, "Oh no, so that's a hadith." And I was like, "Whoa, what is it?" And then he was like, "Okay, thank God." So that's not. Yeah, it's just. I mean, I think.
That's also another thing. Like, if someone's a submitter, or really a submitter, like they will not listen to, like listening to an idol worshiping preacher, no matter how good he sounds or how impressive he is. You know, they know that these people are hypocrites. And
well, he would tell himself that no, he would tell himself no, Mufti is like doing this for the greater good. There's some powerful people in Saudi Arabia that like kill him if he started preaching like the true message. Or say he's just lying to himself, dude. Like he makes up these conspiracy theories to justify. And I'm like, dude, no. I'm like, you know, but I mean, there's been so many. God is the most merciful. There's so many chances. That's
you know, I think this hadith, that hadith, you know, is the reason why some of these countries, like especially like in Turkey, like you see people being so super nice, not super nice, but you know, watering the cats and feeding them, you know.
Yeah.
Even more.
Yeah, that almost that can make sense. Yeah, but I mean that's what like when I heard it, I'm like, wait, this isn't right. This isn't just like it goes against everything I was hearing, and it got me really depressed, like because I was like, well, I can't believe something like I don't. You know,
that's not justice, obviously, you know, because someone can go to heaven for watering a cat. You know?
Exactly.
That's not justice.
Because I was like, well, why does it tell us to like forbid from evil? Like, because it was the same thing with Jesus. Like the whole Jesus thing, by God's grace, I was able to escape from. I mean, my dad too, but then
you
I'm
can
like,
just
well,
water
was this
animals.
Just a repeat?
You can just water the animals and then just go commit all kinds of you know mischief on earth and then just go to heaven.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But but yeah, I mean, like knowing this person, but yeah, it's Evan, I mean, it is like I guess blessings in some ways, like, 'cause it's like Quran comes to life in a lot of different respects, you know, throughout. But it's also very scary. Like it's extremely. I mean, I told you some of the things he was telling me on the phone. Like now that he's getting older, he's I mean, they freaked me out. Like he was saying like he I don't know. Yeah.
Mm.
Like how can you even say that you know you're going to hell? Like he's kind, and then he like said he curt or I mean I don't know if I should put this out. I mean, but I mean in the sense of getting the point across, and I mean whether he's listening or not,
He's not
probably
listening,
doesn't.
but
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
but yeah,
you
I
can
mean,
still
he's
talk about the
talking.
concepts, you know.
Yeah, cursing God or something, and then like or saying, and I'm like, well, did you repent? You know, and then like he just starts talking about all this crazy. This is like one of the last times, second to last time I spoke to him on the phone, and then it just baffled me because he's talking about these things, and then hell, and then I'm like, okay, well, like if you know, like why don't you do something about it? Like turn, like you know, like what are you doing? Like because it's like he's bearing witness his belief in a sense. Like it's like okay, like how can somebody willingly like be okay with where like when they're still when you know obviously when they're still alive and able, but it's like he's trapped or something. I mean like physically too. I mean just I'm not gonna go into that situation, but like it's weird. But yeah, I mean this was like someone who I mean got the message and.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he
Yeah.
was very nice to me too. You know, like you say real nice things, and I went and stuff, which I guess, which was nice. But yeah, I mean, it's ego. He doesn't want
Yeah, I
to
mean,
fix himself. Or,
yeah, mashallah. It says in verse number 10, it says that in their minds there's a disease. Consequently, God augments their disease. They have incurred a painful retribution for their lying. You know, so this shows to us that like it's a progression. You know, when it says God augments their disease. You know, like first it's small, like but you know, the disease can be seen when the message comes to a person, right? I guess I mean until the person has the message, it's not obvious if they have the disease or not. But once they see the message, then the disease, you know, starts to appear, and if they fail to treat the disease, you know, then it just continues to grow and grow, and eventually just it becomes enough for this person to just go to hell.
yeah, yeah, and I mean, he could ask God to help him too. Like no matter what he was even going through, you know, like God, please help me. Like even like if I can't help, or if he doesn't know how to like God, because if he's sincere, God will hear him.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Also, the idea about the lightning, it says, you know, it's like they have flashes. What I was saying earlier, it's like they have flashes of light, you know, but just flashes here and there. Like when a lightning happens, you know, it's just flashes here and there. You can't really see anything because it's so dark, because there's no moon or anything, right? It's very dark. But you have these flashes of light in between where you may see just a little bit, you know, about like where you may be and stuff, but you can't really see much, you know. And that's the example of the hypocrites, like how limited their vision is in terms of their guidance. I mean, how astray they are. They're really, for the 99.99% of the part, I mean, they're sunk in complete darkness. They just may see things here and there, little bit, you know.
Right. Yeah. Or something else will take him away. You know, like I mean, even with the individual, I have a little hope for him too. But I mean, I haven't, I think you know who I'm referring to. I don't want to say. I mean, he even joined one of our Quran studies, but yeah, I mean, like it's God's retribution is severe, like for completely, but yeah, I mean, there was even one time there was arguing about fasting, like knowing so little about the Quran, and I told him a year ago, I said no fasting, like is decreed for our salvation, and he was trying to say it wasn't like, oh, what if you don't fast, you're going to hell, like he's trying to spin it off like that, like, and I'm like, and then like just upset me. I just like stayed real quiet. And I just walked away and said, okay, good luck, and then. But no, he ended up apologizing later and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's like you get more like cues and stuff. I think with time, with people, like whether they're from family or something, and but yeah. I mean, imagine like what these people are going to be like on the day of judgment if they don't take heed. I mean, God willing, they do. But yeah, I mean, I told you about like even doing a Friday prayer with them, and then like I ended up getting a flat tire. Yeah, like I told you about a little bit of the. Yeah, but anyway. And, yeah. But, you know how we're not supposed to be like intoxicated or anything, and during our prayers, and I still did the prayer with this person, and I mean, he's trying his best, but like I should at least maybe like say, hey, maybe next Friday, I don't know, but I ended up getting a flat tire the next day, and I got my hint, like I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, I repent and won't do it, but yeah, I mean, God protect us,
So you were repenting from telling them the right thing, you mean?
No, I didn't. I did the prayer with him, knowing that, like.
Oh no! Oh yeah. Okay, I understand.
Yeah, like he wasn't.
I see.
He was just. Yeah, and then like I could tell, and I was like, man, should I do it? But I ended up doing the sermon, and then the next day, tomorrow or the following night, I get a flat tire, which I had to change in it. But yeah, I got the correlation like immediately, and then I repented. Because yeah, it was like real. Yeah, I was real happy too. I'm like, well, I'm gonna have somebody, pray out here, pray without here. But I mean, God's running everything, so. Yeah, because they're in the worst category, just like with the things we went through, they're gonna try to spread doubt or something, and then, or try to argue with proofs, like or call us, look at us as being astray or saying, and even attribute lies, loosely too, just openly, like, and little to, they're attacking the 19 itself. I don't think those people had any understanding, but mashallah, God sent us more proofs and stuff, so that's
Mashallah.
I got woken up out of my sleep now. I'm talking. That's why I was tired. My sleep.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, me too. Like when I started the study, like I was just barely waking up, trying to wake up my feeling all the brain fog and stuff. Cause didn't get much sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, no coffee or tea.
Yeah, mashallah. So I just mashallah added a couple of things in the app, including these hyperlinks, so you would be able to directly go to the reference stuff in the footnotes, like appendices or verses, you know. You'll be able to click on them, like appendix 25 here, like it takes me right there. And surah and verse directly, I can go click on it. It'll take you directly there. So, yeah. We're still working on it, inshallah.
When we get the transcripts done too, those will be in the app for us to search.
Yeah.
That'll be nice.
Sure. All right, so I guess if there are no other comments or questions, God willing, we can conclude our study. So thank you all for joining us. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. God bless you all and enjoy the rest of your Ramadan and your fasting, I mean. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.